Hey everybody, welcome to my very basic guide. In this episode, we'll be gaining a lot of wrinkles on our brain matter as we dive into the abnormal depths of mental sorcery, better known as the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, a Sorcerous Origin introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of everything. Besides the obvious appeal of having a big bulging head indicating your massive intellect, the Aberrant Mind is a sorcerer subclass that specializes in the manifestation of psionic powers, without dealing with the hassle of managing a separate resource pool. Instead, this Sorcerous Origin just gives the sorcerer extra spells from a spell list that a regular old sorcerer would not get access to, which is really nice for a sorcerer since it helps shores up the classic weakness of having a limited amount of spells to choose from. As a galaxy-brained individual, realizing the psychic potential within is probably quite exhilarating, especially since it comes with some pretty unique perks, such as touching the brains of your friends and foes alike, using raw brain power to mutate your physical body, and despite being such a weirdo, you still get to steer conversations in a smooth direction with most of the inhabitants of your D&D world due to having high amounts of charisma, an enviable combo for many misfits and aberrants on this side of the multiverse. Due to the innate nature of a sorcerer's power, they get their subclass features pretty early on, with one of the standout features arriving at level 1 for the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, and that is their psionic spells. The psionic spells feature is essentially a unique subclass spell list that unlocks more spells the higher level you get in the sorcerer class, but with the really big twist that the Aberrant Mind gets access to a few spells that are from the warlock and wizard spell lists. Not only that, but they do not count towards your maximum spells no limit, so they are just free spell options. The first batch of your newfound sorcerer spells arrive at level 1, where you get Arms of Hadar, Dissonant Whispers, and Mind Sliver. Arms of Hadar is a really nice damaging area effect spell for the early levels. Dissonant Whispers is a really powerful single target spell where if the enemy fails a wisdom saving throw, then they waste their reaction running away from you, which does provoke attacks of opportunities because they use their own movement and reaction to run away. And last but not least is the free cantrip in Mind Sliver. It's quite a powerful cantrip to get access to at level 1, as it does decent damage while having crazy good utility effect of subtracting 1d4 from the next saving throw that an enemy makes before the end of your next turn if the target failed their intelligence saving throw, which is really good. You receive more free spells at level 3, which are Calm Emotions and Detect Thoughts. These two spells are definitely more on the situationally useful side of things, but they are really cool thematically since it does make sense for an aberrant mind to be messing with other people's brains in an intrusive fashion. Although Detect Thoughts will be kind of tough to pull off since sorcerers do not have high enough intelligence to contest people trying to break free from their spell, but still it's really cool to have at the very least to freak people out. Reaching level 5, you receive Hunger of Hadar and Sending. Hunger of Hadar is a really good damaging area effect spell that also has great crowd control utility, giving the blinded condition to enemies inside its zone, and also becoming difficult terrain to make it especially tricky to get out of. And Sending is a nifty long distance communications tool that can be handy from time to time. Making your way to level 7 gets you Avard's Black Tentacles and Summon Aberration. Black Tentacles can do quite a bit of work on bunched up enemies that are not particularly dexterous. The devastating ability to potentially restrain a bunch of enemies inside difficult terrain that cost them their action to break free from, and also repeatedly smacks them with fat tentacles every turn if they failed a single dexterity saving throw, is a really enticing ability in many circumstances. Summon Aberration is one of the new summon spells introduced in Tasha's Cauldron, and it offers a fairly versatile selection of creepy alien pets for the aberrant mind to put in front of them to either distract enemies or to just outright kill them, as all of the aberrant spirits do good amounts of damage with their innate multi-attack that doesn't require any action from the sorcerer after the initial summoning. Finally, you reach the last tier of free stuff at level 9, with Rary's Telepathic Bond and Telekinesis. Rary's Telepathic Bond is basically a more expensive version of your telepathic speech. Instead of a one-to-one private messaging service, it's now a big Discord channel in your brain where up to 8 creatures can talk to one another over any distance, with the added bonus of having a built-in translation device, allowing creatures that do not speak the same language to converse inside their own minds. And the last free spell is Telekinesis, which is another really cool utility ability that matches the theme of an aberrant mind really well. Using the power of your big brain to mess with things in the physical world is a really fancy demonstration of mind over matter. Spells from the psionic table can also be swapped out with the new spell of the same level when you level up as a sorcerer, and the new spell can even be from the sorcerer, warlock, or wizard spell lists, with the only restriction of having the new spell being either from the divination or enchantment schools. Also, as a cool piece of fluffy flavor for being a brainy sorcerer is that you get telepathic speech, also at level 1. This basically just allows you to private message anyone that is within 30 feet of you, establishing communications using telepathy with just a bonus action. Once your brains are hooked up, you can continue to drain chat with each other as long as you guys are both within a number of miles that is equal to the aberrant mind's charisma modifier. Although unfortunately, this psionic direct messaging service does not come pre-built with a universal translation device, meaning that you have to mentally speak in a language that the other person actually understands. This connection with your pen pal will only last a number of minutes equal to your sorcerer level. This psionic telephone can also end earlier if the aberrant mind gets killed or is incapacitated, or if they decide to slide into someone else's brain DMs. So overall, a pretty cool feature that can help you talk to to your adventuring buddies in a way that is safe against eavesdroppers, and can even help coordinate complex missions on the fly without giving any indications that you and your teammates are currently scheming together in the crevices of your private brain logs. Reaching far beyond the starter features, we find ourselves at level 6, with a pretty unique buff to your list of free spells in the form of Psionic Sorcery. Psionic Sorcery allows you to directly turn sorcery points into spell casts. If the spell that you are casting is on your Psionic spells list, and the sorcery point cost is equivalent to the spell's level. This basically saves you a few sorcery points per Psionic spell cast, which really adds up in the later levels and throughout a hard-fought day of spell slinging. Psionic Sorcery also saves you quite a few bonus actions throughout a battle if you are out of spell slots, or if you just want to save your regular spell slots for casting spells outside of Psionic spells list. If you choose to use Psionic Sorcery to cast spells using your sorcery points instead of regular spell slots, you also don't need to provide verbal, somatic, and material components as long as the material is not consumed by the spell. The first part of Psionic Sorcery, allowing an Aberrant Mind Sorcerer to cast spells directly using their sorcery points, is a little bit niche since it kind of overlaps with the sorcerer's ability to generate more spell slots using flexible casting outside of combat, but having a few extra bonus actions can come in handy. It can smooth out action economy problems some sorcerers can have when using meta magics like Quicken Spell. But the most interesting part of the level 6 Psionic Sorcery feature is that you no longer have to care about any of your spell components if you choose to cast psionic spells using your sorcery points. This has a few implications for specific scenarios, such as if you want to sneakily cast your spells without immediately revealing your location, then Psionic Sorcery can theoretically make that process a lot easier. You can also cast a spell without anyone knowing that you are the caster, since you don't have to verbally speak magic words or use somatic gestures. Psionic Sorcery also allows you to cast spells while carrying things in both hands, or if both hands are tied up by something like rope, or if both hands are broken. You can also bypass disruptive spells like Silence that would normally prevent you from casting a spell with a verbal component. The spell Summon Aberration that the Aberrant Mind receives at level 7 also benefits from being able to forego the material component cost of a pickled tentacle and an eyeball in a platinum inlaid vial worth at least 400 gold pieces, since the spell does not consume it, which can be quite useful since having such a fancy platinum vial might be hard to come by depending on your setting, and it also removes the weakness of having the material being stolen or destroyed. A secondary feature that you also receive at level 6 is Psychic Defenses, and it's basically what it says on the tin: resistance to psychic damage type, but also advantage on your saving throws against being charmed or frightened. Obviously, Psychic Defenses is a very thematic feature, as being a big brain sorcerer should by all rights make you a mental fortress of solitude. Psychic damage is a fairly rare damage type, but it's also rarely resisted, so being able to catch a few hits from fellow aberrations and denizens of the far realm can catch quite a few enemies off guard. But the more mechanically handy side of your Psychic Defenses is your advantage against the charmed or frightened condition. You will most likely run into enemies that have charming or frightening abilities in your day-to-day adventuring activities, so having that extra bit of mental defenses will absolutely save you a lot of trouble in the long run. Reaching level 14, the aberrant nature of the galaxy brain is starting to become more and more apparent as you begin to be able to willingly mutate your body to gain access to special bodily functions for 10 minutes. There are 4 different options that the aberrant mind can access, and each option requires feeding your body 1 sorcery point, using a bonus action. Alternatively, you can gain multiple new bodily functions using more sorcery points for a maximum of 4 sorcery points in order to stack all 4 fleshy buffs at the same time. The first Revelation in Flesh option mutates your eyeballs, giving them the ability to see invisible creatures that are within 60 feet of you, as long as your line of sight isn't being blocked by anything. But even better, your eyes can either turn completely black or become writhing sensory tentacles, which is a pretty big buff into your charisma if you ask me. But on a more serious note, a 1 sorcery point and a bonus action to see creatures that have gone invisible for 10 minutes is a very neat trick that can help you against more annoying enemy types. The second option gives you the power of flight, except without any wings or normal means of propulsion. Instead, you get magic skin that gives either a strange glow or secrete a special mucus that causes your skin to be really shiny when flying. The flying speed is equal to your walking speed, and you can hover around menacingly as an added bonus. The third transformation option is for when you slack scuba diving gear and need a cheap alternative, as this transformation gives you the powers of breathing underwater and a swim speed that is 2 times faster than your walking speed. Visually, you grow gills or gain webbed fingers or even turn into a giant mass of writhing cilia that apparently goes right through your clothes, basically making you look like a very hairy bacteria. The fourth and last Revelation in Flesh option turns into quite the slick operator as you begin to ooze all over your body, and any equipment that you're carrying becomes squishy and malleable, like Elastic Girl or Mr. Fantastic, or any of the other stretchable heroes you can think of. You can now fit through any space as small as 1 inch without having to squeeze through, which basically means you don't take the movement, dexterity saving throw, and attack roll disadvantage that creatures trying to squeeze through tight spaces normally take. Not only that, but this slimy, stretchy body of yours only needs to expend 5 feet of movement to escape from non-magical restraints and from grapples. This is a pretty unique ability and with a lot of creative application, especially if you're planning on a stealthy heist mission or if you plan on being an escape artist like Houdini. More often than not, you'll probably be using this to escape from grapples, and that can genuinely be a lifesaver, especially against enemies that try to pull you closer to the front lines. So in summary of the Aberrant Mind's 14th level feature, Revelation in Flesh, I would say it's a pretty efficient and effective way of offering a diverse selection of new tools at an insanely cheap cost, that being only 1 sorcery point per perk. Also, I really enjoy how each of the transformations include a visual effect that changes how you look in a very creepy fashion, and I also enjoy that the adjective writhing is apparently a running theme with the Aberrant Mind. I do think that the second option of flying for 10 minutes for only a single sorcery point is probably going to be the most effective versatile ability that you can use, especially considering that it is effectively a 3rd level fly spell for 1/5 of the sorcery point costs, while also not requiring concentration to maintain. But all those other abilities are quite nice to have as well in your back pocket whenever you encounter those specific scenarios, and given the fact that you can just keep on piling the transformations as long as you have bonus actions and sorcery points to use, it never suffers from having a too good to use syndrome type effect. Finally, arriving at the pinnacle of big brain time, level 18 allows the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer to channel the spirit of Jimmy Neutron, giving you the lethal equivalent of a brain blast in the capstone feature of Warping Implosion. As an action, you can teleport yourself to any location that you can visually see within 120 feet of your person. Additionally, you leave behind the psionic implosion effect at the place that you were previously at. The Warping Implosion affects all creatures within 30 feet of the space that the Aberrant Mind left, forcing a strength saving throw to resist the damage and pull of the implosion. If a creature fails a saving throw, then they take the full 3d10 force damage and is yanked straight towards the space that the sorcerer teleported away from, ending in an unoccupied space as close as possible. However, if they succeed on a strength saving throw, then they only take half damage and are not pulled at all. You can only use Warping Implosion once per long rest, or if you decide to expend 5 sorcery points to use it again. At level 18 you have 18 sorcery points, and that's quite a large pool, but on the surface it might still be a tough value proposition to use up 5 sorcery points, which is equivalent to a 3rd level spell slot for a sorcerer, since 3d10 damage is significantly less than a fireball's 8d6 on average. But the upswing for why Warping Implosion can be really good, or at the very least very interesting to play around, is because of its ability for the Aberrant Mind to blink 120 feet away, which is a pretty staggering distance, and on top of that, the potential to position enemies that were around the sorcerer into a big blob that is a perfect target for AoE splash damage spells such as Firestorm or Meteor Swarm that is used in conjunction with the Quicken spell meta magic so that you can cast them with your bonus action, since Warping Implosion is actually a feature ability, not a spell that you cast, which allows the sorcerer to get around the bonus action spellcasting rule. It is a bit of a gamble to try and draw enemies into a Warping Implosion, since it is an ability that does not distinguish friend from foe, so you may unwittingly hurt your allies, or else you have to position yourself in a very dangerous spot with no one around you in order to bait enemies towards you. Also, forcing a failed strength savings throw is going to be kinda tough to pull off, since many monsters that are not nerds are usually jocks and are pretty beefy in the strength department. But other than that, Warping Implosion is a pretty unique and really fun ability to theorize about, since pulling a bunch of enemies 25 feet can be easily used in a devastating and creative fashion, making for potentially very memorable plays. And that about does it for this very basic guide to the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer subclass as presented in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. The Aberrant Mind Sorcerer is a really fascinating sorcerer origin, and giving the sorcerer access to certain warlock and wizard spells is a pretty exciting prospect and opens up a lot of possibilities when used in conjunction with a sorcerer's metamagic options. The aesthetic and theme of having an alien influence pumping up the midichlorians in your brain and giving you psionic powers is really cool, and definitely scores pretty highly on style points alone. If you're really into being a Galaxy Brain spellcaster that can turn on the charm and touch out the people's smooth brains while patting yourself on the back with your newfound tentacles, then the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer will not disappoint. And as always, I hope that anyone who watches my stuff enjoys what I create as much as I enjoyed creating in the first place. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, goodbye for now.